Over 150 hours later, I'm finally able to talk about Trails of Cold Steel 4. But be forewarned, because Trails of Cold Steel 4 is a direct continuation of Trails of Cold Steel 3, it's very difficult to talk about this game without spoiling parts of Cold Steel 3, and even show any footage without spoiling some aspects of Cold Steel 4. So if you're just here to find out if Cold Steel 4 is any good, well, yes it is. But for everybody else, let's jam. For the last several months, I've been experiencing my way through the Trails of Cold Steel series. The ride has been absolutely incredible. Does Trails of Cold Steel 4 stick the landing though, or does it fall apart under the weight of its own immense story? To see how this game picks up, let's examine where we left off. As is now tradition at this point, Trails of Cold Steel 4 takes place immediately following the events of Cold Steel 3. The members of Class 7, old and new, just confronted the combined forces of Ouroboros, the Gnomes, Gileath Osborne, and his Ironbloods in the Grawl of Erebos. Just when it appeared that victory was within grasp, Reen and company were outfoxed by Osborne, forcing a fight between Class 7 and the Nameless One. In an act of tragic self-sacrifice, Milliam saves her friends from certain death while taking a fatal blow from the Nameless One. This act of self-sacrifice transforms Milliam into the Sword of the End, the only blade that could kill the Nameless One. With the death of Milliam, Reen, in a fit of anger, succumbs to the curse of Erebonia that was seated deep within his heart and loses himself to his rage. Berserk from the rage and power of the curse, he obliterates the Nameless One using the Sword of the End, and in doing so, he unwittingly unleashes mayhem as the curse of the Great Twilight spreads itself across the Empire as a black wind, amplifying the anger and bloodlust of all denizens of the Empire, stoking the flames of a coming war. Reen, completely lost to the curse, is captured by Osborne and company, and the members of Class 7, old and new, are scattered to the winds. All of the machinations of Cold Steel are coming to a head, drawing Erebonia headfirst into a war with Calvard and likely sparking a great war between all nations.
Together we shall write the end to this wretched fairy tale. In ink, black as despair.
It is within this absolutely insane fever pitch of intensity that Cold Steel 4 begins, following the members of the new Class 7 as they awaken in a daze within the halls of Thor's military academy, with no recollection of the events that had transpired. And let me tell you, that beginning sequence really messed with my brain, and I am so here for more of that. It is shown in the introduction that the Great Twilight has also affected the memories of everyone in Erebonia, and things just get crazier from here. It is now up to Juna, Kurt, and Altina to overcome this trial, reunite the scattered members of Thor's military academy, and put the band back together to rescue their beloved instructor, and try to prevent an all-out war between all of the nations of Zemuria. Does that sound like a lot? 'Cause I'm leaving so much out. With Reen out of the picture, Juna Crawford now fills the role of protagonist and interim leader of Class 7, and in that role I find she does a pretty solid job. She is an active character who naturally steps up to the role as leader, drawing inspirations from her time with not only with Reen, but the members of the SSS of Crossbell. She is headstrong and has strong convictions, and she also feels like an underdog. She's inexperienced, which adds a bit to the dramatic tension. Rin was an experienced and super powerful war veteran when we last left him off. He had crazy ogre powers, a mystical martial arts background, and a gigantic magic robot buddy backing him up. With all of those factors stacked in his favor, victory always at least felt like a foregone conclusion. The new Class 7 though? During my Twitch streams, I heard that others disagree on Yuna's fitness for the role, and if you disagree, that's fine, I get that too. I think that's because the initial transition felt a little clumsily written compared to the rest of the game. There's a moment early on when Yuna gives a grand and rousing speech to the members of Old Class 7 to fire them up. However, up to that point, Cold Steel 4 hadn't done a whole lot to show that the Old Class 7 had lost hope or their drive in the first place. It didn't take the time to show that the speech was actually necessary first. So instead, it felt less like Yuna helping shake everyone out of a funk and more like she was abusing the members of Old Class 7 who were just mourning the loss of good friends and family members following a thorough defeat. This was a crucial moment where Yuna was meant to shine and bring people back from the brink. Failure here to really nail down this moment will start her off on the wrong foot for some, and I think that's given Yuna a somewhat divisive reputation among fans of the series, but clearly the developers intended for Yuna to be seen as a good person and natural leader. The way the members of Class 7 agree with Yuna's assessments and thank her for snapping them out of their funk pretty much confirms that. And I think that if the game took more pains to show how necessary it was for Yuna to step up to the plate, her perceptions among the fandom would be less divided, at least in this specific way. Any other issues that I have with Yuna are less about Cold Steel 4 and are instead inherited from earlier titles, and the established pattern of Rin's animal magnetism that turns every unsuspecting lady in the game into a member of his ever-expanding harem. This is one aspect of the Cold Steel series that is really starting to outstay its welcome for me. These titles have really embraced storytelling in a way that I adore overall, and I do so enjoy a good love story, but the way that the plot demands that every girl falls in love with Rin, and Falcom wants players to be able to choose their preferred waifu, prevents any real relationship progress from one game to the next. Contrast that with the love story between Estelle and Joshua to see how characters committing to a relationship not only improves those character developments over time, but can add to the overarching narrative and improve the game-to-game cohesion. The harem thing worked well enough for 1 or 2 entries in a series, but after 4 games of will they, won't they, all the while building up a harem of upwards of 15 bachelorettes, things have gotten seriously out of hand over time. Let's talk about the other overarching kind of plot. The events within the game were absolutely off the rails from the word go. Considering how Cold Steel 3 ended, I really didn't know what to expect from the conclusion, but it certainly wasn't this. And that's probably a good thing because my expectations were honestly kinda low. I've played enough games that just build up a story to such complexity and such high stakes that it takes literal acts of a god to untangle the messy webs of twisting plot threads. Cold Steel 4 doesn't escape entirely unscathed this time around. There's a lot of convenient rabbits being pulled out of conveniently placed hats. However, there was very little in the way of hand-waving away explanations. Cold Steel 4 was a game of revelations, many of which drastically altered my understanding of the world of Zemuria yet again. And for some people, that might be a tough pill to swallow. I'm certain this will prove to be a crucial pivot point for the series and probably a pretty divisive one in the fandom at that. I think there's a lot of suspension of disbelief required in this one, and at this point, some people might bow out. So far though, I'm personally still on board, and it seems to me like they've tied up enough of those loose ends where I feel like the next arc can begin in a nice tidy way that should be open for newcomers. I realize that there's still technically one more game before the new arc truly begins, but from where I'm standing, things seem to be pretty well straightened out. Regardless of how you feel about Cold Steel 4 and its ever-escalating stakes and series of events, I think that we can all agree that the gameplay within this is the same top-tier turn-based goodness that we all came to love in Cold Steel 3. It builds upon that combat system, refining and expanding its mechanics to offer more nuanced and strategic experiences. Cold Steel 4 refines the Brave Order system to be a little less overpowered, but gradually unlocks those orders to their full potential after some optional in-game challenges are overcome. New crafts and S-crafts expand the party's attack repertoire and overall feels less restrictive as party members learn new, more powerful abilities. Many of the changes to combat help bring some added balance to the system, but fear not, my fellow min-maxers, for there is still plenty of game-breaking strategies for people like us who just love to abuse these combat systems. Perhaps more now than even ever before. The cast of characters at your disposal this time around is also vastly expanded over Cold Steel 3, which I didn't even think was possible. All in, there are nearly 40 playable characters, including temporary party members, which is just completely astounding when you realize that each of their movesets are entirely unique, and having had 8 previous games in the series to draw from means that each and every one feels wholly fleshed out. The Divine Knight battles also get expanded upon significantly as well, now featuring up to 3 mechs that the player can control and up to 3 versus 3 combat scenarios. These fights are slowly becoming more in-depth and strategic than before, and sometimes taking a couple dozen minutes to clear as things progress. At their core though, these fights remain the same, mostly simplified combat scenarios from Cold Steel 2 and 3. One of the gameplay mechanics that I really appreciated this time around is how every location is now able to be fast traveled to. Cold Steel 3 had some fast travel, but being able to fast travel from within dungeons to different floors you've been to, or fast travel to specific treasure chests within other dungeons, or specific buildings in specific towns, really helps cut out much of the game's tedium, which is incredibly important because my playthrough, which was nearly 100% run, took well over 150 hours last I checked, even though I abused that quick travel function to its fullest. Helping to encourage that kind of run though, Cold Steel 4 did go the extra mile to help players locate hidden quest opportunities, hidden book locations, and quest markers too. One man's quality of life improvement may be another man's bastardization, but I'm certainly not going to complain about less fumbling around blindly for hidden events when the game is already this full of content. Visually, graphically, and aesthetically, Cold Steel 4 is identical to Cold Steel 3, which makes sense for this kind of duology that I've been growing accustomed to in the Trails series. The games were designed for PlayStation 4, and for this review, I'd played them on my PlayStation 5 and captured them in 4K. There are now PlayStation 5 native versions of the game as of the time of this review, but aside from some marginal load time improvements and slight differences in the gamma and saturation levels, the differences are mostly imperceptible. And the music of Cold Steel 4 is more of the greatness that I've come to love from Falcom, with some truly fantastic reprisals from music all the way back to Cold Steel 1 and even some as far back as Trails in the Sky. The new rendition of the Enforcer's theme was absolutely incredible and had me grinning from ear to ear. All in all, Cold Steel 4 manages to land the plane and bring this absolutely insane story to a conclusion. It answers so many of the questions that I had in mostly satisfying ways that had me excited to see where things can go from here. I was a little worried that the series would go full Kingdom Hearts on me at the end and disintegrate into incomprehensibility. I think that there was some hand-wavy magic MacGuffin stuff, but at this stage in the series, I think at least some of that is to be expected. And I think they managed to thread the needle. At least for me, they did. So with that said, I'm really excited to see where the series can go from here in Trails into Daybreak. But we do still have some loose threads to tie up in Trails into Reverie. And we'll talk about that some other time in the game collection.